Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Chaf Dalad Amud Beis 24b of Masechus Megillah. We're starting from the very top line of the page, where the Gemara quotes the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said, Pocheach Poris al Shema. So the Mishnah talks about a Pocheach, which Rashi had said on the Mishnah that a Pocheach is someone whose Kra'av are Nirin. Karav could be his feet or his legs. So he has certainly his feet uncovered, certainly no shoes, no sandals, barefoot, and maybe even more than that, his legs. Tosfos said it's talking about someone who his clothes are torn. So again, because of that, some of his body is revealed. So the Mishnah had said that a pocheach is allowed to be poris al Shema, but he cannot read from the Torah. It was a lack of kavod tzibur, honor of the kavod Torah. Actually, a lack of honor for the Torah for someone in that state of pocheach to read from the Torah. Now, the Mishnah also said that a katan, a child, is allowed to read from the Torah in general. So now the Gemara asks, Ba'a minei ula barav me'abaye ula barav asked Abaye katan pocheach ma'osh yikra b'Torah. So a katan, a child, is allowed to read from the Torah. A pocheach is not. But what if the katan is a pocheach? If the child has his let's say his feet revealed or his legs revealed, is that a problem? Because he's a katan, he's a child. Are we concerned about that level of that lack of kavod for the Torah, lack of honor for the Torah? If it's just a child doesn't have the pasuk is v'lo yirah b'cha er bas davar. You shouldn't have nakedness revealed, and we associate that with tefillah and things. So it's not relevant for a katan, for a child. So therefore, maybe he's allowed to read the Torah in this manner, or maybe not. So the Gemara asks, the Gemara responds. Abaye answered, "V'tibai lach arum." Why are you asking about pocheach? Just ask about a katan who's completely naked. Because if the assumption of your question is that v'lo yirah b'cha er bas davar, that we're not concerned about the nakedness of a child, then ask the question if he doesn't have any clothes. Now, it seems that Abaye is anticipating that obviously that's not going to fly. Obviously that's not going to be okay. So he says, Aram I time alo. Meaning, why? I guess he's saying, why didn't you ask about Aram, about naked? Because mishum kavod tzibur, because you're concerned about the honor of the congregation. Probably also the honor of the Torah. So here too, even if he's not completely naked, but he has part of his body revealed, so either because his clothes are torn or because his feet or legs are uncovered, but either way, it's also a lack of kavod tzibur, it's a lack of honor to the congregation, so it should not be okay either, and Abaye seems to hold that a katan would not be able to read from the Torah, or if he's revealed in this manner. Okay. Then the Mishnah said that a summa, someone who's blind, could be paris al Shema, could lead the blessings of the Shema, but Rabbi Yehuda said if he never saw light in his days, ain't no paris al Shema. So Rabbi Yehuda argued and said only a blind person who once saw and has seen light, then they could lead the blessings on the Shema. But if not, then no, because one of the blessings of the Shema is all about the creation of light. And if he's never seen the light, then he shouldn't be the one to make that blessing, at least not on behalf of others. So Gemara brings a little background to this. It says, Tanya, we learning a brisa. Amru lo Rabbi Yehuda. They said to Rabbi Yehuda, you're saying that if he hasn't seen light, he shouldn't make the blessing over light? They said, Harbet sa'uf lidrosh b'merkava. Many people have tried to darshan, to explain the verses that deal with the Merkava, the chariot of Hashem described in the book of Yechezkel, and they've never seen it, and yet they speak about it. So I suppose they're saying so. just like nobody's seen that, they're going by the description. So a blind person can say the blessings, he's going by the description that's in the blessings. Rabbi Yehuda will respond, no, there's a difference. Hasam ba'avanta deliba talya milsa. There, when it comes to darshaning, to learning about the chariot of God, again, it's a spiritual idea, but we put physical terms to it. But so it's about avanta deliba, it's about the understanding of the heart. A person could really focus and get a sense of what we're talking about. And therefore, it's okay for somebody to try to describe that. However, but here, by the blessing, mishum hanahu, the blessing is an appreciation for the benefit of light. But he doesn't have any pleasure from the light, doesn't benefit from the light. So therefore, a blind person should not make the blessing over the light of Yotzer Hama-Oros. He created the luminaries. So the difference is that one is about learning and understanding, and you're just trying to get understanding. One is expressing appreciation. The blessing is expressing appreciation, and that he hasn't benefited from. So it's not for him to make that blessing. V'Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan will respond. The Rabbanan who say no, that even a blind person will make that blessing and can lead the Paris Hashema on behalf of others. So the Rabbanan will say, Islay Hana, that really even a blind person benefits from the light. How so? Rabbi Yossi, like what Rabbi Yossi taught, Tanya, because we're learning a Brisa, Amar Rabbi Yossi said, Kol Yama Yayisi Mitzvah al Mikrazeh. I never understood, for all my days I never understood this pasuk in Devarim, this curse really, where it says, this is, I think, part of the Tochacha. In Kisavo, it says, V'yisa memashmesh batzarayim, you're going to feel around in the middle of the day, kasher yimashe sha'iver ba'afela, just like a blind person feels around in the dark. So, he said, I never understood. V'chima ichbat le'iver ben afela le'ora. What does it mean like a blind person feels around in the darkness? It doesn't matter if it's dark or it's light, it's always dark for the blind person. So what does that mean, like the blind person who feels around in the darkness? So, until a certain occurrence happened, and then I understood the pasuk. What happened? I was once walking in the dark of night. In the dark of night. I saw a blind person walking along, and he was holding a torch. Amarti lo, I said to him, Bini, my son, avuka zu lamalach, why do you have a torch? You can't see anyways. Amarli said to me, Kozman shavuka biyadi b'nei adam roen osi umatilin osi minga pechasim minga kotzim minga barkanin. He said, as long as I have the torch, then people can see me, and they will see a blind person walking along, and they will save me, they will point out the different things along the path that I need to avoid, like the holes and the thorns and the thistles, and this way I benefit from the light. So the Gemara is saying that the Rabbanan say that no, even a blind person benefits from light, and therefore it's befitting even for a blind person to say the bracha of Yotzer Hama-Oros. This was just an example that Rabbi Yossi saw where, in this case, it was a torch. It wasn't the light of day, but it's the same idea. That a blind person also benefits from light because it helps others guide him along. Okay, continuing with the next Mishnah. Kohen sheyesh biyadav mumin lo yisa es kapav. A Kohen whose hands are blemished should not duchen. Why not? Duchen should not do birkas kohanim, should not do the blessing of the kohanim. Why not? Because people are going to stare at his hands, and you're not supposed to stare at the kohanim when they are doing birkas kohanim. So customarily now we just don't look at all. We cover our face in a talis, or we look down, looking our siddur. But it seems from here that wasn't always the case. It was just don't stare at them. You can see them out of the corner of your eye. Strictly speaking, it's not. You don't have to completely duck out of the way. So, but if a person's hands have something strange about them, then people are going to stare. So we don't want people staring at the hands of the Kohanim when they are doing Birkas Kohanim. And the Gemara says, Rashi quotes, that if one stares at the hands of the Kohanim, then their eyes get weakened, because the Shekhinah is there, Hashem's presence is there. And so in order that since if a person's hands were blemished, people would stare, so he shouldn't duchen, he shouldn't do Birkas Kohanim if his hands are blemished. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af mishayu yad of tzvuos dis. So too somebody whose eyes are dyed with blue dye. Sorry, not his eyes, his hands. If his hands have blue dye on them, lo yisa es kappa minei shamastakim. Lo yishurent duchen, because people will stare at him. So if his hands are colored, I don't think it has to be blue. But again, something that attracts the eye, he shouldn't duchen because people are going to stare at him. Says the Gemara, Tana mumen sha'amru, these blemishes that we say a kohen shouldn't duchen if he has them, bifanav yadav v'ragel. It's not just his hands; it's also on his face or on his feet, which are uncovered. All of that he should not duchen. Not everybody has this girsa. Some don't have it, and I guess it would be specifically the hands that are a problem if you don't have it. But we'll just read it since our Gemara has it. Okay, Amar Yeshua ben Levi. Yeshua ben Levi said, Yadav buhaknios lo yisas kappa. If his hands are spotted, he should not duchen. Again, tracks the hands. Tanya nami hachi, we're in the Singha Brisa. Yadav buhaknios lo yisas kappa. If one's hands are spotted, he should not duchen because it attracts the eye. Akushos lo yisas kappa. If they are bent or crooked, he should not duchen. If they're either bent in or bent to the side, his fingers, so he shouldn't duchen. That will attract the eye. Amar Ravasi said, Chifni ubishini lo yisas kapav. Someone from Haifa or Beis Shan should not duchen. Why not? So, as we'll see in a moment, the people in these places pronounce aleph as ayins, and ayins as aleph. So they mix up aleph and ayin, and if you, instead of saying ya'er with an aleph, ya'er Hashem panav, you say ya'er with an ayin, the more nasal sound, but if you pronounce it like an ayin, so then it means like to awaken panav. Now panav sometimes means his face. So ya'er panav means he should shine his face towards you, but ya'er with an ayin would mean he should awaken his face, and then and Pana, face, sometimes means anger. It would be like saying he should awaken his anger. Now, we don't want to say that. So, therefore, people from those places who mispronounce the aleph as an ayin should not duchen at all. Tanya nami hachi, we learned similarly in a brisa, in Maridim Lifnei HaTeva, lo anshe Beis Shem, lo anshe Beis Haifa, lo anshe Tavonim. That not only should they not duchen, they shouldn't lead the davening either. People from Beis Shem, Haifa, or another place, Tavonim, because they mispronounce words, they're pronouncing aleph as an ayin, and an ayin as an aleph. Amalei Reb Chia Reb Shimon bar Rebbe. Reb Chia told Reb Shimon the son of Rebbe, Il Maliata Levi, had you been a Levi, Pasalata Mingadochen, you wouldn't be allowed to sing on the platform like with the rest of the Leviim. Mishum de avi kolcha, because your voice is very thick, which means you don't have a good voice. So I don't know why you had to tell him this, but he said that maybe he wanted him to stop singing. He said if you were a Levi, you wouldn't be on the duchen, you wouldn't be able to sing with the other Leviim because you have a thick voice. Asa Amar Le'alavu. So Rabbi Shimon bar Rebbe was insulted. He was bothered. He went and he told his father Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Amarle, so Rabbi Nasi said, Zil Emalei, go tell Rabbi Chia, Kishata, who was a student of Rabbi, Kishata Magia Itzel V'chikesi LaHashem, Lo Nimtes Mecharif U'Megadef. He said, when you read the pasuk, V'chikesi LaHashem, and I wait for Hashem, I hope to Hashem, so you're going to be a Mecharif U'Megadef, you're going to be a blasphemer. Why? Because Rabbi Chia, this what the connection is. Rabbi Chia would mispronounce a ches as a hey, and And therefore, instead of saying v'chikisi l'Hashem, and I await Hashem, it would sound like v'ikisi l'Hashem, I strike, God forbid, Hashem. So he said, you're a blasphemer. So that was his retort, if he's insulting your voice, insult the way that he pronounces things. Okay. Amar Rav Huna said, Zivalgan lo yises kapov. If a person has a condition where there's always tears coming out of their eyes, they should not duchen, probably again because it attracts too much attention. Ask the Gemara, but there was a guy who was a zivalgang, his eyes would pour out, would leak water, he would cry all the time, and yet he duchened, and he was in the neighborhood of Rav Huna, and apparently Rav Huna was okay with it. Says the Gemara, Hahu dash b'yirah. That's because he was dash b'yirah, he trampled his city literally, meaning everybody knew him. So everybody was used to it, it wouldn't bother people, wouldn't get their attention too much, and therefore it was okay. As long as they were used to it, so then it's okay for him to duchen. Tanya Nami Hochi, we actually have this stating a brisa. It says, Zivalgan lo yises kapov. A person who tears, who's teary-eyed, should not duchen, should not do birkas kohanim. Literally again, lo yises kapov is he shouldn't raise his hands. V'imhaya dash be'ira motor, but if everybody was familiar with it, then it's okay. Rabbi Yochanan said, Suma be'achas me'enav lo yises kapov. Someone who's blind in one eye should not duchen. I'm assuming that this was some kind of visible blemish that he had, that you could see that he was blind in that eye. So, because then it would attract people's attention. Because again, we asked about who, but there was a guy in the neighborhood of Rabbi Yochanan who was blind in one eye, and he would duchen, he would spread his hands. Again, we say that guy, he trampled the city, everybody knew about him, and was used to him, and therefore it wouldn't bother them, and it wouldn't attract their attention, and it's okay for him to duchen. Indeed, we learned that in a brisa, Suma b'achas me'enav lo yisa es kapov. Someone who is blind in one eye should not duchen, v'imhaya dash be'ira motor, but if people are familiar with him, then it is permitted. Okay, now finally, we said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mishahayu yadav tzvuos lo yisa es kapov. If a person's hands are colored blue, he shouldn't duchen. Tana, it was taught, Imrov anshe ir melachta mekach motor. If the majority of the people of the city, that's their malacha, that's what they do, so then it is permitted. So I'm not sure what occupation this is that leaves your hands looking blue. But if it was the main occupation of the city, and the majority of the people had it, so then it would be okay for them to duchen. Because again, we're going to attract people's attention. Okay, the next Mishnah. Ha'omer eini over lifnei hateva b'tzvuin. If a person says, I am not going to pass before the ark, meaning I'm not going to lead the davening in colored clothes, only in white. So afba goin b'levanim lo yavar, saying he can't even lead the davening in white. That's suspicious. For somebody to say, I won't wear colored clothes, he can't do it in white. Because that, the Gemara is going to say, that was what the Christians, the Minim, the heretics would do. They would only wear white, so that would cause us, if somebody says that, cause us to question his faith, and he can't lead the davening at all. Besandal, Eini over, if he says, I won't go in sandals, Af Yachef lo yaber, then he can't go barefoot either. If he says he won't go in shoes, he can't go in barefoot either. Ha'oset tfilaso agula, sakana v'engo mitzvah. If a person makes their tefillin round, so it's dangerous. It could get, the Gemara says it could get lodged in their head. Sorry, not the Gemara. Rashi says it could get lodged in his head. I saw in the Sefaria translation, it said it's dangerous because in a time where you're not allowed to wear tefillin, it would be dangerous to make the sacrifice when it's not even a mitzvah. Because as the Mishnah says, ve'ein ba mitzvah, there's no mitzvah to do it. That's not the mitzvah of tefillin. It's not round, it's square. Nasna al meitzchel al pas yado. If a person puts the tefillin on their forehead or on the palm of their hand, hareza derech aminos, that's the way of heretics, of those who deny the validity of the oral tradition. They're going with the simple reading of the text. It says, ukshartam le'os hayodech as a sign on your hand. So they say, that's on your hand. Or, vayu totofos, bein and echad, should be between your eyes, that's your forehead. So if you see, now the oral tradition teaches us that that's not what it is. It's on your arm is near your heart, and bein and echad is between your eyes, but on your head. So if you see somebody doing that, putting it on his hand or on his forehead, so that means he is a denier of the oral Torah, a min, a heretic, and he caused himself to be discovered. If a person either coats his tefillin in gold, or he puts it over his sleeve, on top of his sleeve, rather than directly on his arm, this is the way of the outsiders, meaning those who interpret the Torah, that they just go with their own interpretations, and again, not with the opinion of the Chacham, of the sages, who darshan, they learn, it says, it says, different verse, it says, V'haya lecha le'os, should be for you a sign. For you, and not for others. Meaning, it's not to be worn on the outside of your clothes. If anything, it should be inside, but directly on your skin. And also the gold, it says that that you should wear tefillin so that the Torah of Hashem should be upon your mouth, which also teaches us that the tefillin has to be made from kosher sources, and so it all has to come from kosher animal, and not from gold, which gold is not kosher, but it's not a kosher animal. Okay. Ask the Gemara, my time, what is the reason that if somebody says, I will only daven in white, I won't daven in colored clothes, why can't he daven? Why can't he read the davening? Because we're concerned maybe he had minus, had heresy that came upon him, meaning Rashi says that Ovdei Avodah Zarah, the idolaters, that's how they do it. I don't know if it could also mean the Christians. That's a sign that he's not of our religion, and therefore he should not read the davening. Okay, then we said, if a person makes their tefillin round, that's dangerous and there's no mitzvah. Let's suggest this is the same thing as we learned in a brisa. The brisa says, tefillin merubaos halachol Moshe misinai. That which you have to have square tefillin is a tradition from Moshe at Sinai. It's halachol Moshe misinai. Ve'amar Rava, and Rava explained, b'tafran uve'alach sonan. What we mean is both where they're sewn, b'tafran, where they're sewn. So the bottom of the tefillin box has to be square, and where you put your the sewing, and be'alach sonan, and at the diagonal. Yeah. Okay. So basically certainly the bottom square of the tefillin where the has to be square, as well as the box that sits on top of it. So okay, so isn't this the same as the Mishnah? The Mishnah says that you can't have round tefillin. if you make round tefillin, it's first of all dangerous, and second of all, it's not a mitzvah. And it was a brisa also. So is the brisa just repeating the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, Omer Papa Masisin Davida Kiyam Guza. No, the Mishnah could have just been talking about a perfectly round tefillin. It says if you make your tefillin round, it's not good. But what if you make it like an oval? Maybe then it will be good, like an egg. So that's what the brisa comes and adds and says no, it has to be square. It's not just that it can't be perfectly round, but an oval will be okay. It has to be square. Okay, we'll hold there.